As Biden returned to the White House, he said he'd be talking a lot about infrastructure today, but he didn't say exactly who he'd be speaking with. Biden said his infrastructure plan will create thousands of jobs, but it would also give the government greater role in the economy than it's had in generations. NTD's Melina Wisecup takes a closer look.
One selling point for Biden's infrastructure plan is that it will create jobs. It's actually dubbed the American Jobs Plan.
It's the largest American jobs investment since World War II. It will create millions of jobs, good-paying jobs. It will grow the economy.
A Hillsdale economic professor agrees that it will create jobs, but he says the important question to ask is, will these jobs add value to the country's overall economic growth?
With the kinds of things that government does, often these things should be seen as make work. They're not really creating value. It's as if you're digging a ditch and then filling it back up, digging it again, filling it back up. It's true, somebody's been put to work, but is that work productive?
Steele says some products the government makes are indeed productive, but they tend to be less productive than the private sector. That's because the government doesn't have price signals to assess the value of its products.
Officials have an incentive to increase costs and no incentive to create value. And so government tends to be very wasteful. And so the bigger the share of government, the more waste in the economy and the less sustainable it is.
And this infrastructure plan would move employment from the private sector, where it tends to be more productive, to the hands of the government, where it's less productive, expanding the government's economic role while the private sector contracts. Some deem this as a good thing, to move away from a capitalist free market system. But Steele says a look at history can explain why this approach could be dangerous for the U.S. economy.
In the Soviet Union, they produced lots and lots of stuff. They had shortages of things that people actually needed. They had surpluses of things that people didn't want, but they produced stuff. That is, it took valuable resources and made stuff that wasn't as valuable as what they started with. And that's really what wrecked their economy.
And this infrastructure plan will be a top priority for Congress when they come back in session next week. It's likely to pass in the House, but it's unlikely to pass in the Senate with no Republican support so far. But Senate Leader Chuck Schumer is looking to get around the need for that Republican support by using a second budget reconciliation this year. And that hasn't been done before, so we're still waiting on a decision from the Senate advisory to see if Schumer can move forward with that plan. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
And Biden is prepared to join Schumer on this effort. That's according to comments from his energy secretary, who said on Sunday that Biden prefers to work with Republicans. He added that Biden is prepared to take another route if needed. The U.S. Capitol police officer injured in Friday's attack was released from the hospital on Saturday, as the Capitol's police union warns of a risk of losing more officers from the force. NTD's Lin reports.
The deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol Friday left one police officer dead and one injured. The officer killed in the violence is William Billy Evans, an 18-year veteran of the force. CBS News says the officer who was injured was released from the hospital on Saturday. Following the attack, the Capitol Police Union is urging Congress to address security gaps. The union leader said in a statement, Capitol Police is 233 officers below the authorized force level of 2,072 officers, and another 500 officers will be eligible to retire in the next 3 to 5 years. The suspect who rammed the two officers was 25-year-old Noah Green. He described himself on social media as a supporter of the Nation of Islam. Green had filed a name change petition in December, seeking to change his last name to Muhammad. Green's family told the Washington Post that he appeared to have mentally unraveled in the last several years. Lin, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
The Supreme Court dismissed a lawsuit on whether former President Trump could block critics on Twitter. They said the case is moot because Trump is no longer president. In the ruling, Justice Clarence Thomas took aim at social media networks for their seemingly unchecked power to silence voices, including former President Trump's. He said Twitter made it clear that the right to cut off speech lies most powerfully in the hands of private digital platforms. He suggested these companies may not have the right to regulate speech under the First Amendment. This may undermine their protection under Section 230 in the future. Thomas said the Supreme Court will likely have no choice but to intervene in the growing debate over big tech. Thanks, Steve. And State Secretary Blinken says the White House will make ending the pandemic worldwide a part of their mission. This could mean a few things, but sending vaccines to other nations is part of it. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
The U.S. Secretary of State tied the U.S.'s recovery to that of other countries.
Even if we vaccinate all 332 million people in the United States tomorrow, we would still not be fully safe from the virus. Not while it's still replicating around the world and turning into new variants that could easily come here and spread across our communities again.
Part of the plan, he said, is using billions of dollars approved by Congress to help countries better prepare for future pandemics and help people have better access to vaccines. He didn't specify what this would look like. Then there's preventing another pandemic.
And we'll keep pushing for a complete and transparent investigation into the origins of this epidemic to learn what happened so it doesn't happen again.
The White House hired a former Obama-Biden appointee, Gail Smith, to lead the international effort. As of Monday, 75% of seniors in the U.S. have been vaccinated. 55% are fully vaccinated. The CCP virus has killed more seniors than any other age group. Now, sleeves are rolling up, but virus cases are climbing. CDC data showing a 7-day moving case average of 64,000 on Saturday, and it looks like younger people are driving up that number. The latest CDC data shows the highest number of reported infections among 18 to 24-year-olds, but that's been the trend since last year's July. And if you remember, at some point, a Baltimore plant ruined a batch of the J&J one-shot vaccine. A report said that an ingredient of the AstraZeneca vaccine's formula was wrongly mixed in, ruining 15 million doses. Well, the White House says that this isn't going to affect AstraZeneca's application process with the FDA, and that AstraZeneca has yet to submit their application for emergency use in the U.S. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
And Dr. Fauci says the U.S. government will not be mandating vaccine passports, but he says he expects certain businesses and schools to require them. White House Press Secretary Psaki says the administration will provide guidance to private partners. And Border Patrol agents are getting some help. A new group of people trained to work in processing facilities just graduated. That means Border Patrol agents can get back out on the line.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
A group of newly trained staff is being deployed to border processing facilities in Texas. 39 Border Patrol processing coordinators spent 8 weeks training for the new role. The role was developed under the Trump administration to help put Border Patrol agents back on border security, instead of having them deal with humanitarian issues. The coordinators won't be armed or have arrest authority since it's not a law enforcement position. The chief Border Patrol agent at the training academy says they plan to train 5 more groups this year. And a Republican senator says he was told to delete photos he took of migrant facilities during a recent visit to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Well, we were told to delete the pictures. No one did. You've seen the video coming out of all of these kids crammed together under the foil blankets, huddling together.
Senator John Barrasso is also a medical doctor. He told Fox News that Customs and Border Protection isn't testing children for the virus when they arrive, only when they leave.
They've all been exposed, and then they're sent all across the country. You know, that is the real tragedy of this.
We reached out to the White House for comment, but haven't heard back yet. And a bipartisan group of lawmakers says fixing the immigration crisis is President Biden's responsibility. Senator John Tester said he's not sure what Congress can do in the immediate future. He told The Hill, "I don't know you need legislation. I think what we need is to make sure we get the people and the technology down there to stop it." Senator Sheldon Whitehouse told The Hill it's the executive branch's responsibility, saying, "If they feel they need additional resources, obviously we're here to help." And Republican Senator Lindsey Graham told The Hill they need to go back to the policies that were working. Biden put Vice President Kamala Harris in charge of dealing with the border crisis in March. Although she's answered questions from the media, she hasn't held a news conference about it yet.
Getting a handgun in Iowa may have just gotten easier. The state's governor passed a bill backed by the NRA, which means you no longer need a permit to get guns like revolvers.
Iowans can now carry their handguns in the open and buy them without a permit from non-licensed sellers. These are sellers who aren't licensed by the federal government, but the law doesn't remove every check. Sellers will be slapped with a felony charge if they sell, rent, or loan a firearm to someone who they know or reasonably should know is intoxicated or shouldn't legally have one. Republican Governor Kim Reynolds said on Friday, "Today I signed legislation that protects the Second Amendment rights of Iowa's law-abiding citizens while still preventing the sale of firearms to criminals and other dangerous individuals." This makes Iowa one of 19 states that no longer require citizens to get a permit before carrying a gun. The National Rifle Association supports the new law. Democrats don't. In a statement to ABC 9, Iowa's Democratic Party Chair Representative Ross Wilburn said, "The governor's reckless disregard for the safety and well-being of Iowans is limitless. Our communities aren't safer when criminals can legally purchase a handgun without a background check." The new law doesn't ban background checks, but people can buy guns from sellers who don't require them.
And dads in Utah need to pay up. That's according to a new law that will require biological fathers to pay half of pregnancy costs. The bill was introduced to decrease the burden of pregnancy on women and increase the responsibility for men. It would apply to a pregnant woman's health insurance, premiums, and other pregnancy-related medical costs. If there's a dispute over who the father of the child is, they don't have to pay until it's confirmed. The bill isn't meant to lower abortion rates, but some proponents say it might. Planned Parenthood spokeswoman Katrina Baker said she doesn't think that'll happen because raising a child is much more costly than just the pregnancy. Other critics argue the law won't help women who are in abusive relationships and say it may only help wealthier women. Major League Baseball is facing backlash for boycotting Georgia. That's as the organization extended a contract with a company that has close ties to the Chinese Communist Party just one day before boycotting Georgia.
Major League Baseball, or MLB, is facing backlash over its boycott of Georgia. This is because it's willing to do big business with Chinese state-owned companies and companies with close ties to the Chinese Communist Party, known for its human rights abuses, but it's boycotting the Peach State over election reforms. MLB has been doing business in China for years, but it's just come to light that only one day before MLB boycotted Georgia, the organization extended and even expanded its contract with Chinese tech giant Tencent, which has significant ties to the CCP. MLB claims Georgia's new voting laws amount to voter suppression. MLB Commissioner Robert Manfred said in a statement that the Georgia boycott would demonstrate MLB's values as a sport. But now, many people are wondering what exactly those values are, given the CCP's ongoing human rights abuses and genocide of Uyghur Muslims. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo shared an article on Twitter about MLB's partnership with Beijing Enterprises Real Estate Group, a top Chinese state-owned enterprise, and wrote, "Georgia's laws don't comport with MLB's values, but China's do?" Kentucky Senator Rand Paul said, "Your sports league might be a little too woke if it will freely do business with communists in China and Cuba, but boycott a U.S. state that wants people to show ID to vote." Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton responded to the Georgia boycott saying, "Hey MLB, how many days of early voting are allowed in China?" And General Spaulding, author of Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept, wrote, "The all-American game is now all communist. Also, it wants no voter ID. Are you still blind to what's happening in America?" The CCP continues to carry out numerous human rights violations and religious persecution. Yet many large corporations have turned a blind eye to these atrocities in order to gain access to the China market. But over the last couple of years, as many of these corporations make accusations of oppression and human rights abuses in the United States while still doing business in China, A movement to boycott these corporations has gained momentum. A number of people are already saying they're canceling their MLB subscriptions.
President Biden delivered an Easter message from the White House today. The traditional Easter egg roll was canceled again this year, but it didn't stop a certain mythical creature from making an appearance. NTD's Kevin Hogan has the details.
Good to see you, Bunny.
Biden, the First Lady, and a masked Easter Bunny gave a nod to the nation. Biden thanked those who attended, his friends, and the White House Historical Association. That's for helping them deliver thousands of commemorative eggs to vaccination sites across the country.
Easter's a day of joy when we celebrate resurrection and renewal. But this year, we know many are still going without the familiar comforts of the season. The virus is not gone, and the second year in a row, most will be apart from their families, their friends, and the full congregation that fill us with so much joy.
Biden said that with faith, hope, and love, anything is possible. The White House canceled the annual Easter egg roll again, but Biden hopes they'll be able to partake in the festivities next time.
And we look forward to next year when the White House will ring with joy of the season once again, and there'll be an Easter egg roll, God willing. May God bless you all. May God protect our troops and take care of the Easter Bunny.
Under all that fur, the Easter Bunny is really Biden's military aide, Brandon Wessling, who's an Air Force lieutenant colonel. Apparently, the bunny's wife, with blue eyes, a purple dress, and a maroon mask, made an appearance at the White House press conference.
Is the bunny taking questions?
Not today, but we'll invite the bunny back for a future briefing, as always. But the bunny's wearing a mask, where we use every opportunity.
On Easter Day, Biden said being vaccinated is a moral obligation.
It's a moral obligation.
That was in an address on his Twitter. According to Pew Research Center, just over 2/3 of Americans plan to get the vaccine or already have. But the ones who won't cited concerns about side effects as the main reason not to. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Coming up, an artist from Oregon fights gun violence with paper and paint. She hopes to help heal the pain and reduce further losses through art. Each new horrific mass shooting shocks the nation. One is too many, but we've had far too many. One artist is responding to the tragedies with a project of hope and healing.
An artist in Portland, Oregon is fighting gun violence with crafts. She set out to raise awareness with hopes of helping heal and reduce the pain. The Gun Violence Archive says last year, attacks involving guns killed nearly 20,000 Americans.
The numbers are just too big to comprehend.
In 2017, after a mass shooting in Las Vegas, artist Leslie Lee started the Soul Box Project. Leslie asked people to make those small boxes and send them in for the exhibits. Each soul box holds space for one life lost or injured by gun violence, whether by defense, accident, or suicide. Last Friday morning, 724 hand-folded boxes appeared outside of the Maryland State House in Annapolis.
And it helps people to feel like they're taking some action in a way that's very beautiful. And folding the boxes is very meditative and calming.
More than 160,000 soul boxes have been created so far. The words and artworks on the boxes carry messages from people all over the country.
What we're talking about is having people recognize how big this issue is, that it's actually a national health crisis. And to use, if they own guns, use them responsibly.
Leslie said in October this year, her organization plans to display 200,000 soul boxes on the National Mall in Washington, D.C.
A pond filled with toxic water is discharging into Florida waterways. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declared an emergency while officials scramble to prevent the pond's levee from collapsing.
A pond of contaminated water is leaking into Florida waterways. The situation escalated over the weekend. Authorities declared an emergency and evacuated residents. They say the 800 million gallon pond could collapse at any time. Manatee County Director of Public Safety Jake Sauer told WSTP that a containment wall shifted at Piney Point Containment Pond. He says the structure of the pond could collapse at any time. Authorities evacuated more than 300 homes and a jail. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declared an emergency.
I issued an executive order declaring a state of emergency in Manatee as well as in Hillsborough and Pinellas counties.
The area is south of Tampa Bay. Officials say they are draining the pond so it doesn't collapse. They say the water is running into an aquatic preserve near Tampa Bay via local creeks. The Center for Biological Diversity released a statement about the incident. They say Piney Point is the site of something called a phosphogypsum stack. It's a waste byproduct of manufacturing fertilizer. They say the stack contains radioactive materials and toxic heavy metals. The statement says the stacks are very dangerous, and the release is a preventable catastrophe. DeSantis denies the released water is radioactive.
To be clear, the water being discharged to Port Manatee is not radioactive. It is primarily salt water from the Port Manatee Dredge project mixed with legacy process water and stormwater runoff.
He says water in the area is being tested to ensure the safety of residents. Manatee County officials say there is no threat to wells or drinking water. DeSantis says the owner of the facility is accountable for any damages.
New York State keeps opening up. Nightly curfews are lifting today, but not for all businesses. NTD's Ariane Pazdar has the story from New York City.
If you missed going to the gym after 11 p.m., then here's some good news. The curfew for gyms, movie theaters and bowling alleys has been lifted, meaning they can be open around the clock again. But restaurants and bars, they still have to shut their doors at 11 p.m. New York City's mayor was asked why restaurants and bars still have a curfew.
The later you go, behavior can be affected.
His medical team explained the decision further.
You've had a drink or two, if you're in an environment where there's a lot of shouting or physical exertion, which we know also facilitates the spread of the virus.
New York City is speeding up vaccinating its residents.
We have now surpassed 500,000 doses in a week, and we can go farther.
Governor Cuomo came to Queens to announce the start of the Roll Up Your Sleeves program. It encourages people to get the vaccine. He says now is the time to defeat the virus once and for all.
And the first step towards doing that is you have to take the vaccine. You have to take the vaccine.
The mayor and the governor both say that the vaccine is the key to getting back to normal and reopening some more. State officials will look at the restaurant curfew at the end of the month, and if the numbers look good, New York City might soon return to being the city that never sleeps. Ariane Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, a Vietnamese-American is warning her fellow citizens about the rising popularity of socialist ideas. She saw similar patterns in Vietnam before she fled the country. And students in Southern California can go back to in-person learning for the remainder of the school year. But some teachers are still concerned. That and more on NTD News.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
A Vietnamese-American is warning that socialist ideas in America today could lead to communism. NTD's Eileen Ang has more.
Amy Fan West is a mother of 3, a small business owner, and is running for California State Senate. She was born in Vietnam, but escaped in 1985 due to the communist regime. Now she's warning Americans certain patterns playing out in the U.S. are similar to those in her home country. She says the government is creating problems that don't really exist.
They create the problem, they brainwash the people, because the more you tell the people something, they're going to start believing it, even though it's a lie, complete lie.
One example of this is the Stop Asian Hate movement, which West says is actually linked to a socialist agenda.
The media right now and the career politicians are wanting their political agenda to continue to stay in power. They have to pin us against each other. When we are pinned against each other, we're going to want more government to intervene to stop this chaos. That's what they do. They create the problem and then create the chaos, and then us begging for more government. It's them who created it in the first place, right?
West also points out that big tech plays a big role in spreading propaganda by limiting free speech.
I never felt this silencing on social media ever. I mean, we always have the freedom to share our mind and our thoughts, but the big tech are so much more powerful than our government, and they're silencing us and our voice and our opinion.
Another example she gives is the current administration's efforts to ban guns, which violates the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms.
Is to protect ourselves, not only our family and ourselves, but to protect us from our government. Because when government gets so powerful, we have that Second Amendment to defend ourselves and overturn the government if they're becoming a dictator.
West says people should elect officials who will defend freedom. She also encourages young people to think for themselves and not let social media intimidate them or dictate their thinking. Eileen Ang, NTD News.
Students in the Los Angeles School District have the option to go back to the classroom, but some teachers are against the move, saying they don't have enough choice in the matter. Here's more from NTD's David Lamb.
Parents in the Los Angeles area now have the option to let their kids return to campus this month or continue with distance learning. But the United Teachers of Los Angeles is calling for the district to let teachers with children continue teaching remotely until they get subsidized childcare. A petition from the Action Network says the move doesn't give teachers the same kind of choice parents are being given. They claim it forces educators to choose between their families and their jobs. The petition got over 2,000 signatures. Supporters say it's a risk to have teachers come in person, especially when they have kids of their own. But critics pointed out other essential workers, like healthcare and grocery store employees, never stopped working in person, are also parents of children, and without guaranteed childcare. The LA Unified District announced hybrid teaching, as well as online-only models. Under the elementary school hybrid model, students will be on campus 5 days a week with the same group of students. Middle and high school students will be on campus 2 to 3 days a week. Students may return as early as this month. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Coming up, the last body was retrieved from Taiwan's deadly train crash. A survivor lost her entire family. Her husband and 2 children are among the dead. That and more on NTD News. Thousands of people are mourning those that died in Taiwan's worst rail disaster in 7 decades. A man suspected to be responsible for the crash is now in detention.
On Monday, the last body was retrieved from the wreckage of Taiwan's deadly train crash last week. Last Friday, an express train with about 500 passengers on board slammed into a truck near Hualien City. The train derailed and the front end was crushed. The crash caused 51 deaths, and the youngest victim was just 6 years old. More than 200 people were injured. The truck has slid down a slope from a construction site and landed onto the tracks. Officials suspect that the truck's brakes were not properly applied. The driver of the truck, Li Yinshan, apologized in tears last Sunday. Taiwanese authorities are now investigating him. A local courthouse says Li has to be in custody for at least 2 months to prevent him from destroying evidence. A passenger survived the tragedy but lost her husband and 2 children. While she was crying, a priest explained what happened to her family.
After waking up, she saw that her husband was not breathing and had no heartbeat beside her, and her son was not breathing and had no heartbeat either. She could not find her daughter. When she yelled, she found her daughter was stuck under the debris. She tried to move the debris, but her daughter's voice became quieter and quieter, and then there was no response.
Another mother is also mourning the death of her child. Her son was the train's driver. He escaped a deadly train accident 3 years ago. That's because he asked for a day off before the accident. But this time, he became the driver of the derailed train due to a schedule change. Over the weekend, relatives went to the site to mourn for their loved ones. Relatives will receive roughly $190,000 in compensation for each victim. Flags across Taiwan were lowered at half-mast for 3 days. All injured passengers will also get compensation. Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen paid her respects to the victims on Saturday. Taiwan's transport minister has been at the site since the accident. He announced over the weekend that he would resign. The Taiwanese government has yet to follow up on his resignation.
Communist China sent a strategic military message over the weekend. In a rare move, its warships sailed near Japanese waters. Both China and the United States have sent their carrier groups to the area.
China's aircraft carrier Liaoning and 5 warships were spotted passing through the Miyako Strait off southwestern Japan on Saturday. Japan has sent a destroyer and 2 patrol aircrafts to gather information and monitor the movements of the Chinese vessels. This is the first time the Liaoning is known to have passed through this waterway since last April. The movements come after the U.S. and its allies conducted military exercises in the region.
These naval moves and maneuvers are China sending a message to Japan and to the United States that it will not tolerate the Biden people following the Trump approach. They want a return to the pre-Trump era of Obama and Clinton.
Recently, China has been using large fleets of what it calls civilian boats to moor around Whitsun Reef in the disputed South China Sea. Manila has warned Beijing to withdraw what it considers maritime militia from its exclusive economic zone in the Spratly Islands. If they don't, China could face a barrage of diplomatic protests. Reportedly, a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group led by the USS Theodore Roosevelt entered the South China Sea.
The U.S. and other countries are telling China that the days of accepting its aggressive moves are now over and that the West will resist.
During a long phone call on Monday, Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi urged his Chinese counterparts to halt its intrusions into Japanese waters around the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. President Biden is going to meet with Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga at the White House on April 16th. China will be at the top of their agenda.
It's no secret that Communist Party officials in China can amass a lot of wealth using their political power. But a recent corruption case still shocked many. An official was found to have embezzled over 2,700 real estate properties in 20 years. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on that.
Corruption taken to yet another level. Chinese media recently revealed the details of a CCP official's corruption case. It allows us to get a glimpse of just how much wealth CCP officials are able to amass. A regime official in China's northeastern Liaoning province, Xichang found to have embezzled more than $1.5 billion and more than 2,700 properties. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. He previously served as the mayor and the Communist Party secretary of a couple different cities in Liaoning province. Xi's family business has been in operation for more than 20 years, and he reportedly used his family's 20-plus companies to engage in criminal acts involving gangs. The companies operate in different sectors, including logistics, pawn shops, real estate, futures funds, among others. Using his political power, Xi made a fortune for his family business. With Xi's support, one of his brothers embezzled about $80 million of compensation money. It was through a demolition project in Dalian. The money was supposed to be given to residents whose houses had been demolished. Xi's family business assets exceeded over $1.5 billion. On top of the 2,700 properties, the assets also include creditors' rights worth around $900,000, plus lands, high-end cars, luxury wine, among others. The Xi family often collected debts through violent means. Measures they used reportedly include breaking people's hamstrings, cutting off their fingers, or crushing people to death with a car. Xi said at the trial that he doesn't know about these things. He also brushed them aside as trivial. Xi was sentenced to life imprisonment for organizing gang-related activities and more than a dozen other crimes last year. Chinese media reported that in the past 3 years, a total of $90 billion in assets related to gangs have been seized nationwide. And CCP officials were often involved in those crimes. Due to the lack of transparency, it is unknown how high the figure actually is.
Coming up, the UK will be easing lockdown measures next week. This as the government says they will test out vaccine passports at select large events. And watch a 21-year-old British free climber scale one of Europe's highest skyscrapers without any ropes. That and more in just a minute on NTD News.
The glory of piano masterpieces from the Baroque, classical, and romantic periods. New Tang Dynasty Television invites you to join the 2021 NTD International Piano Competition. Together, we preserve and revitalize the art of authentic classical piano music. October 2021 in New York City. Register now at piano.ntdtv.com.
Over to Europe, the UK's Prime Minister confirms the next stage of lockdown easing in England will go ahead on April 12th. It comes as the government announces trials of vaccine passports at some large events. Here's NTD's Jane Werrell with more.
A drink outdoors, a trip to the zoo, and that much anticipated haircut. Things we can look forward to as the Prime Minister confirms England will enter the next stage of easing on April the 12th.
And on Monday the 12th, I will be going to the pub myself and cautiously but irreversibly raising a pint of beer to my lips.
Scenes like this, a sight that a couple of years ago wouldn't have appeared strange, may return in some settings, as the government says they will trial vaccine passports at selected large events, including the FA Cup final, though passes won't be required to enter retail shops and pubs on the 12th of April. The certificates could be used to show you've had the vaccine, had a negative test, or already have antibodies against the virus. For overseas travel, ministers say this won't be allowed until May the 17th at the earliest. Foreign holidays are banned in the UK, with people facing a £5,000 fine for going abroad without a good reason. The ban on foreign travel will be replaced by a traffic light system, with countries around the world rated as red, amber or green. It's not yet clear which countries are in which categories. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
And the British government also announced Monday that everyone in England will be able to take free, regular COVID-19 tests. This is part of the government's roadmap out of lockdown. NTD's Neil Woodrow has more.
Free twice-weekly rapid COVID-19 tests are to be made available to all in England from Friday. The government says since their introduction, 120,000 positive cases have been identified that would otherwise have not been found. Many have by now come across these tests that involve processing a nasal swab sample. These lateral flow tests can detect a positive result in under 30 minutes. The government says more people getting a test will increase the ability to identify and control virus variants. Chief Medical Advisor to NHS Test and Trace, Dr. Susan Hopkins, says lateral flow tests are effective in detecting people that are infectious and therefore most likely to transmit infection to others. The government said in March analysis showed that for every 1,000 lateral flow tests carried out, there is less than one false positive result and an accuracy rate of over 95% for people with high viral loads. But when administered by self-trained members of the public, it drops down to just 58%. The test kits can be ordered online for home delivery. Official data shows that in the last 7 days to April the 4th, over 26,000 people had a confirmed positive test result. That's a decrease of nearly 30% compared to the previous 7 days. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Epsom, Surrey.
A 21-year-old British free climber scaled one of Europe's highest skyscrapers in Barcelona without any ropes or safety measures.
George King took his life in his hands again as he made his way to the top of the Meliá Barcelona Sky Hotel, a seemingly impossible feat done without harness, not one for those without a head for heights. And this is not his first stunt. He free climbed the Shard in London in 2019. That feat earned him 6 months in a young offenders centre for breaching a civil injunction taken out by the owners of the building. After a 20-minute climb, he reached the top of the 116-metre-high building. The applause from spectators below, a likely mix of amazement and belief. But the glory was short-lived. King was arrested by police on the way down. He's now facing a fine for climbing the building without permission. Free climber King is from Oxford but currently travelling around Europe. He also climbed the 144-metre Akbar Tower skyscraper in Barcelona before Christmas.
Coming up, one dog steals more than the spotlight. A clip from one Russian TV station is going viral. And Wakayama Castle's renowned cherry trees are blooming. Visitors are surprised by their beauty. That and more on NTD News. A clip from a Russian TV station is going viral. It shows a dog giving a weather reporter a rough time.
One weather reporter from Moscow was in for a surprise when a dog suddenly snatched her microphone, forcing her to be the retriever.
It looks like we have lost the connection with our correspondent. We will try to get in touch with her once again.
The television station Mir posted the video that day. It went viral, getting almost 500,000 views in 4 days. Later, the weather correspondent got back her microphone and returned to finish her report about spring coming to the region.
As far as I can see, no one from our crew got hurt, apart from the microphone. Nadezhda, can you hear me?
Yelena, as I said before, the weather is great. It fits well for walking your dog. That's all for me. Stay tuned. It's interesting together.
It appears the reporter Fur gave the thief.
The calming sight of hundreds of cherry trees in bloom is drawing visitors to Wakayama Castle's renowned blossoms.
Cherry blossoms, or sakura, have long been a part of traditional Japanese culture. For some, viewing them and welcoming spring is a yearly tradition.
I view cherry blossoms at least once a year. Before, there were always food booths here, and it was very lively. The booths are not set up this year. Though it's a little quiet, the cherry blossoms are very beautiful. It's a worthwhile trip.
She has chosen to come here to see Wakayama Castle's renowned cherry blossoms. These trees are some of the first to bloom in the region. More than 600 trees stand around the highest tower of the castle, known as a tenshikaku. Visitors bring waterproof mats and snacks. They sit under the shady trees, enjoying quality time with friends and family.
I came to view the cherry blossoms with my family. I'm very happy.
The koi swimming freely, birds tasting the flowers' fresh nectar. The 400 lanterns are strung to complement the pink and white flowers. Even if you've seen them before, you can be caught off guard by the loveliness of the scene.
I'm surprised that the blooming cherry blossoms are so pretty. It's really wonderful.
The flowers will only bloom for 2 weeks. Some people take pictures to try to preserve their beauty, but the picture cannot do justice to the blossom's sweet smell, the wind on your face, or the moments shared with loved ones.
A baby capybara has found a new family at the Cali Zoo in Colombia. The 3-month-old was abandoned by her mother last December, so now zoo staff have taken on the role of her mom. She's under the care of a surrogate mother who provides her with the skills she needs for optimal development. Her surrogate mom feeds her, cares for her, and makes sure she gets plenty of time in the water. The Cali Zoo communications manager says the baby capybara was rejected shortly after birth by her first-time parents. But the zoo hopes that in a couple of months she will be able to unite with another female of the same species. And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.